Another one in the books as Pokemon Go Fest 2025 comes to an end. Or does it? Yeah, chill with that, Scopely. My feet are still hurting from walking around in the middle of a heat wave this past weekend. Eternatus is coming to Pokemon Go or something, and that's great, but for now, let's first analyze some of the highs and lows of Pokemon Go Fest 2025. And just for some added fun, let's look ahead to what Pokemon Go Fest 2026 might have in store. High, the spawns. The spawns for this year's Go Fest were neither high nor low, as I'll explain in a moment, but the highs were certainly high, as we got the standard first evolution of a pseudo-legendary in Frigibax, as well as not one but two highly coveted regional Pokemon in Pachirisu and Torkoal. These two Pokemon are only found in Canada and India respectively, meaning that apart from their initial shiny release at Pokemon Go Tour, we don't know when or even if they're going to be available globally again. In addition, we also finally had the global release of Skidoo and Go-Goat, which premiered at live regional events last year. And finally, there was also the global but shiny locked release of Klefki, which only spawns in France. Additionally, there were quite a few spawns that weren't new shiny releases, but were probably new to many players, like Minefu and the Flabébés. Oh, and there was also Carbink, who should be banned from eggs forever. Low, also the spawns. The spawns for Pokemon Go Fest were both a high and low point in my opinion, because it had both a high ceiling but also an extremely low floor, with 16 spawns from prior community days and 9 Pokemon that have a permanent shiny boost. But the most confusing decision was the inclusion of Gothita, Golett, Scraggy, Pancham, and Noirlem, who have all had events in the last month or so with boosted shiny rates. It was strange. It was like they were trying to spoil their own event by making those Pokemon that players would want to hunt for at Go Fest freely available early. But selections aside, dang, the spawn distribution this year was rough. It seemed like you would encounter 7 or 8 Spheal before you'd see one Frigibax or Flabébé, if you know what I mean. To give some perspective, Galarian Farfetch'd was one of the Pokemon I was shiny hunting on Sunday, and seeing as how it would be available all day, I assumed it'd be no problem, but nope. Because the spawn distribution was so heavily weighted, it was too uncommon to find and hunt. Overall, I'd say this was probably a down year for Pokemon Go Fest spawns. The pool is always going to contain Pokemon that a lot of players don't care about, but this year seemed egregiously bad, and the developers didn't do themselves any favors by shiny boosting them for other events just before Go Fest. High, the raids. Now, obviously, whether or not you care about Zamazenta, Zacian, and their crown forms will heavily dictate your opinion on the raids, but one thing I've heard almost no one talk about, but which I think deserves props, is the newer feature that really shined during Pokemon Go Fest 2025. Being able to join raids that your friends are doing, regardless of whether you were invited. This was a game changer. For much of Saturday and Sunday, if I wanted to do a remote raid, I could pull up my friends list and jump in one. This is huge for rural players who have trouble pulling together raid groups and deserves a special mention here. Low, also the raids. Just as with the spawns, my main gripe with the raids was the distribution. To give some perspective, on Sunday I took a break to run some errands, spotted a Frigibax raid, and went, wait, Frigibax is in raids? That's how lopsided it was. Also, am I completely out to lunch for not caring even a little bit about a Phalanx just as a train? Not only has Phalanx always been permanently shiny boosted, but Phalanx is based on a formation of Roman soldiers. So a train seems a little anachronistic. Besides, compare this to Snorlax wearing a cowboy hat, and it's a little disappointing, but that could just be me. Hi, Shiny Unown? So it's hour number 2 on day 1, and I've got my incense humming when, oh, a shiny Unown S. Well, that's interesting. I mean, it's not unheard of. Unown is full odds, but every once in a while wait, what? A shiny Unown I? What's going on here? I've gone entire Pokemon Go Fest without a single, what? A shiny L? A shiny D? An E? An O? Another S? An R? Another S? Yeah, I don't know what caused the devs to open the floodgates on Shiny Unown, but boy did they ever. I got 9 of them across the entire weekend. But with that comes perhaps my hottest take of all. Low, also Unown. Look, I get it. Unown in all its 28 forms are some of the rarest Pokemon in Pokemon Go. But is there any reason to actively want them beyond that? They don't have an interesting design or an interesting shiny, and they aren't useful for anything. I'm not saying they aren't cool and every Pokemon is somebody's favorite, but think of it this way. Once Pokemon Go Fest ends, you won't be seeing an Unown until 6 months from now. But when this event ends, Pachirisu goes back to Canada, Torkoal goes back to India until, who knows, years maybe? So after a while, it became annoying when I was wanting one of them and kept getting Unown. I'm just saying it was a little much, and I wish they weren't that prioritized in the incense spawn pool. Hi, the research. Yeah, the special research was pretty decent. I was able to complete it and have my Volcanion on day 2. No time sinks, nothing too out of pocket that asked you to do something you otherwise wouldn't normally. Yeah, pretty good overall. Low, also the research. This was probably my single least favorite thing about Pokemon Go Fest, the field research. And it was all there, at least on paper. Each habitat had its own research tasks and they rotated every hour. Players could theoretically grind encounters with highly sought-after Pokemon, like Carbink, Mindfu, and Frigibax. It would have been nice to have research tasks for Torkoal, Skidoo, and Pachirisu, but we at least had this to do. There was just one problem. They were, for whatever reason, ridiculously rare. I played the event and was spinning stops consistently, and it took me 4 hours to find just one of these tasks. Midway through day 2, I gave up looking for them entirely. It was incredibly frustrating, and what's funny is that this aspect of the game is my favorite part of the Pokemon Go Tour events. In a game that is so tightly controlled by the developers, having something that you can just go out and grind, something that you control how hard you want to pursue it, is something that is somehow the best part of Pokemon Go Tour and the worst part of Pokemon Go Fest. And that's a shame. The eggs. Okay, I don't know to file this under high and low, so let me hit you with some raw data here, because I went all out hatching and recorded my results. I'm far from a whale, and in fact I hardly spend any money on this game. I just hardly use the incubators I accumulate, so when these events come around, I usually have a backlog saved up to get me through the week. And for Pokemon Go Fest, once the event eggs and half-hatch distance opened up, I got to hatching. For the entire week, I hatched 218 eggs, which broke down to 114 2km, 79 5km, and 25 10km. And this all yielded me 0 hundos and 3 shinies. A Pawniard, a Vullaby, and a Passimian. The Pawniard came from a 10k egg, which wasn't technically part of the event. So if you remove 10ks and only focus on event eggs, I got 2 shinies from 193 eggs, and both were from 2ks. So for the purpose of this sample, definitely not worth it in the slightest. One last note of interest, both of the event eggs hatched during Pokemon Go Fest. So for the days leading up to Go Fest, which were advertised as having the exact same shiny rate, I went 0 for 147. During Go Fest, I went 2 for 71. So not sure if someone forgot to flip a switch or others had the same experience as me. Let me know in the comments. To recap, maybe my complaints and negativity brought this video down, but my synopsis for Pokemon Go Fest 2025 is that it was overall an immensely fun and exciting event that left me with experiences I will cherish, albeit with a few kinks and shortcomings along the way that made it feel like it came up a tad short of some years past. But let's put that aside and consider what we might expect from Pokemon Go Fest 2026 by translating what we had this year into next year. And things get a bit tricky, but before we get into that, I'm a tiny channel with no sponsorships. But if you enjoy my content, which involves a lot of writing, there are links in the description to my 2 latest comic books. One is a detective graphic novel that you can pre-order from Barnes & Noble. The other is a crowdfunded comic on Indiegogo. Ad over. Pokemon Go Fest 2025 was primarily themed around Pokemon Sword and Shield. The main draws were Zamazenta and Zacian, the box art legendaries from the game. The Unown spelled out Sword and Shield. There was Phalanx dressed as a train, which runs through the main series game. So at first glance, a look ahead seems as simple as copying this over to the next game in the series, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. But before you start thinking about catching an Unown V and raiding for Koraidon and Miraidon and their battle forms, there's a problem. You see, Zamazenta and Zacian were released in Pokemon Go all the way back in 2021. They've been in the game for 4 years now, and they're shinies for nearly a year. We don't currently have Koraidon or Miraidon at all, let alone a history with them to hype up their battle forms, which I assume would require some energy from doing multiple raids. So I would say the odds are unlikely, and if I had to throw my weight behind a specific prediction, it would be something like Ultra Necrozma, which would be a bit of a repeat from GoFest 2024, or more likely, Eternamax Eternatus. Ultra unlocks have in the past served as a sneak preview for future content. This year's unlocks hint at the base form of Eternatus, so that's going to be my prediction, with Ultra Necrozma premiering at the Pokemon Go Alola Tour. Special research. Pokemon Go Fest 2026 will include a special research which will reward you an encounter with a brand new mythical, and I think there are really only two good candidates. Magearna, a steel and fairy type, or Zeraora, an electric type. And I could see a case for either, but I'm gonna go with Magearna because I don't really know why, I just am. But there are many other things that I can predict with a reasonable amount of confidence. This year we saw the global release of Klefki and Skidoo. Skidoo was first released at in-person events last year, and this year those same events featured Mudbray. As far as regional Pokemon that will see a global but shiny locked release, next up is Comfey, which is exclusive to Hawaii. Shiny releases. This year we saw the shiny debut of Carbink and Frigibax, meaning next year we get a Frigibax Community Day right before GoFest, where we'll then see the shiny release of Dreepy at GoFest. And as for the other release, well, Carbink is a single-stage Pokemon from Gen 6 that has been in the game for a little while now, so moving forward to Gen 7 and looking for a contender, I landed on Delmise, one of you guys know. I'm not going to get into the weeds of predicting every spawn in every habitat, and I'll do a fuller prediction when it gets closer to the event, but a couple that I will predict right now are the 4 regional Flabébés in each habitat being replaced by the 4 regional Oricoros, and Torkoal and Pachirisu being replaced by Relicanth and Carnivine. But yep, that's it. So long Pokemon Go Fest 2025, and stay safe out there, trainers.